The entire cafe went silent when she laughed. It wasn't a soft laugh, not the kind that hides behind a hand. It was sharp, careless, and loud enough to cut through the clinking of cups and the low hum of conversation. Heads turned. A little girl at the corner table looked up from her coloring book. And in the middle of it all stood Ethan Cole, a single father with tired eyes and flour on his sleeves, holding a tray of freshly baked pastries as if they were the only fragile things in the room. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet strength of people who refuse to give up, take a moment right now to like this video, comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because stories like this remind us that no matter where we are, the human heart speaks the same language. Ethan hadn't always worked in a small neighborhood cafe. Once, he had worn tailored suits and carried a leather briefcase. He had worked long hours in a corporate firm downtown, chasing promotions and bonuses, convinced that success was measured in numbers and titles. But life doesn't ask for your plans before it changes everything. When his wife, Margaret, passed away unexpectedly after a brief illness, Ethan's world didn't just shift, it collapsed. Overnight, he became the only parent to 5-year-old Lily, a little girl with chestnut curls and eyes too observant for her age. Grief wrapped around them like winter fog. Ethan tried to return to work, but conference calls felt meaningless when Lily cried at daycare, asking why mommy wasn't coming home. Spreadsheets blurred when memories of hospital corridors flashed before him. Eventually, he made a choice that many people called reckless. He left his high-paying job and used their savings to buy the struggling cafe Margaret had once dreamed of owning. It had been her idea, her vision of a warm space where families could gather and children could laugh without being shushed. Ethan didn't know the first thing about running a cafe, but he knew how to honor a dream. And he knew how to show up. The first year was brutal. Bills stacked up. Sleep became a luxury. Ethan woke at 4 every morning to bake, his hands learning dough and sugar the way they once knew keyboards and contracts. Lily would sit on the counter wrapped in a blanket, swinging her legs and telling him about her dreams. Sometimes they burned batches. Sometimes customers didn't come. But slowly, the cafe began to breathe. It was on an unusually busy Saturday that she walked in, Vanessa Whitmore. She arrived like someone who had never been told no in her life. Perfect hair, flawless makeup, a designer coat draped over her shoulders. She was back in town temporarily, visiting her parents, and she made sure everyone knew she now lived in the city and worked in luxury real estate. Vanessa and Ethan had gone to high school together. Back then, she had been the girl everyone admired and feared a little. Ethan had been quieter, focused on his studies, invisible to most. Time had changed them both, but not in the same ways. She recognized him almost instantly, her eyes widening in mild amusement as she took in the apron, the flour, the way he balanced Lily on his hip while taking orders. There was something in her expression that hovered between curiosity and superiority. As Ethan handed her a cup of coffee, she let her gaze linger a little too long. She tilted her head and, with a smirk that carried the weight of judgment, made a comment loud enough for nearby tables to hear. She suggested that since he had chosen to be a struggling cafe owner and single that instead of chasing ambition, he must at least be good in bed, as if that were the only currency left for a man who had settled. The laughter that followed came mostly from her own lips. For a split second, the room held its breath. Ethan's ears burned, but not from embarrassment. It was the kind of heat that rises when someone reduces your entire existence to a cheap joke. It could have snapped back. It could have shamed her in front of everyone. Instead, he adjusted Lily on his hip, looked at Vanessa with steady eyes, and answered calmly. He said that he didn't measure his worth by how impressive he seemed in someone else's story. He measured it by whether his daughter felt safe every night when she fell asleep. The words didn't echo loudly, but they carried. Vanessa's smile faltered. Something in his response unsettled her, not because it was witty, but because it was sincere. There was no defensiveness in his tone, no need to prove anything. Used quiet conviction. The cafe resumed its noise, but something had shifted. In the weeks that followed, Vanessa returned. At first, it seemed coincidental. Then it became a pattern. She would sit near the window with her laptop, occasionally glancing at Ethan as he moved efficiently between tables, wiping spills, refilling cups, crouching down to talk to children at eye level. She watched the way Lily ran into his arms after school, the way he knelt to tie her shoelaces, the way he listened when elderly customers shared stories for the 100th time. Vanessa had built her life on appearances. She sold penthouses with skyline views and convinced clients that happiness came with marble countertops. Her relationships were short, polished, and transactional. She had dated men who owned yachts and wore watches worth more than Ethan's entire cafe. Yet none of them had ever looked at her the way Ethan looked at Lily, as if she were the center of gravity. One afternoon, Vanessa stayed long after closing time. The cafe lights dimmed, and rain tapped against the windows. Ethan was stacking chairs when she finally spoke, not with arrogance this time, but with something close to vulnerability. She admitted that she hadn't expected him to answer her the way he had weeks earlier. She confessed that his words had lingered longer than she liked. Ethan didn't rush to comfort her. He didn't seek revenge either. He simply told her that people often hide their emptiness behind jokes. He knew because he had done the same after Margaret died, pretending he was fine, pretending he didn't wake up at night reaching for someone who wasn't there. That was the first time Vanessa saw the full weight of his grief. Not dramatic, not performative, just present. Slowly, something began to grow between them. Not a whirlwind romance, but an understanding. Vanessa started volunteering to help with the cafe's social media, using her marketing skills to attract new customers. She organized small community events, poetry nights, charity bake sales, art displays by local students. Business improved. The cafe buzzed with life in a way Ethan had only imagined. But more importantly, Vanessa began to change. She spent time with Lily, learning how to braid her hair, sitting on the floor during story time. She listened when Ethan spoke about Margaret, without jealousy, without comparison. She saw the cracks in herself, the fear of not being enough unless she dazzled everyone, and for the first time, she didn't try to cover them with perfection. Yet change is never linear. Rumors started circulating. Some old acquaintances whispered that Vanessa was slumming it. Others hinted that Ethan was chasing her wealth. The pressure weighed on both of them. Vanessa's colleagues questioned her priorities. Ethan feared that inviting someone new into his life might disrupt the fragile stability he had built for Lily. One night, after a particularly harsh comment from a former friend, Vanessa almost walked away. She stood outside the cafe, staring at her reflection in the dark glass, wondering if she was foolish to believe she could rewrite her own story. Inside, Ethan was helping Lily with homework. He looked up and saw Vanessa through the window, uncertainty written across her face. He stepped outside, not to persuade her, but to stand beside her. He told her that love, whether romantic, parental, or self-directed, isn't about proving critics wrong. It's about choosing growth over comfort. He said he didn't need her to rescue him, and he didn't want to rescue her. He wanted partnership. He wanted honesty. And if that scared her, it was okay. Fear meant something real was at stake. Vanessa realized then that what had shocked her that first day wasn't his answer. It was the strength behind it. A strength that didn't come from dominance or ego, but from devotion. Months passed. The cafe thrived. Vanessa reduced her hours in the city and began developing a community housing project in town, inspired by the sense of belonging she had witnessed. Ethan, for the first time since Margaret's passing, allowed himself to imagine a future that wasn't defined solely by survival. Before you see how this story truly settles in your heart, I have a special request. Comment the words "second chances matter" below if you believe people can grow beyond their past mistakes. The day Vanessa formally apologized to Ethan for her cruel remark, it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't public. It was quiet, sincere, and free of excuses. She told him she had once equated worth with conquest and image. He told her that everyone learns differently, and sometimes humiliation becomes the doorway to humility. Years later, when people spoke about the cafe, they didn't remember the insult that once echoed inside it. They remembered the warmth. The way Ethan's laughter filled the space. The way Vanessa organized community dinners for families in need. The way Lily, now older, proudly told customers that her dad taught her what real strength looks like. The woman who once mocked him learned that intimacy is not a performance. The man who was publicly reduced to a joke proved that dignity doesn't require volume. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness can disarm cruelty and that growth is always possible, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe for more stories that celebrate resilience. Your engagement helps these messages reach more people who might be standing in their own silent cafe, wondering if they're enough. Because sometimes, the most powerful response to mockery is not revenge. It is love, lived consistently and without apology.